If you will, hold me tight, but for a single night, then you will see.
Did you know that in the Wild West, some saloon girls earned more money dancing with cowboys than they could ever dream of back east? Or that the famous painted ladies were known for their daring fashion choices that scandalized the proper women of the time? Life behind those swinging saloon doors was full of wild tales and even wilder rumors. From secret love affairs to dangerous liaisons, the stories that swirled around these women were as colorful as their skirts. But what was true and what was just gossip? Number 1. The saloon, a hotbed of scandal. You know, the Wild West was a pretty wild place, and nowhere was that wilder than in the saloons. Picture this. At the very beginning of the westward migration, there weren't any proper towns yet. Instead, you had these rough and ready tent communities filled with mostly men. It was like a gold mine for scandal and rumors, especially when the first saloons started popping up. Imagine being in one of these early settlements. Dusty dirt roads, a makeshift church maybe, but the heart of the action? The saloon, with its swinging doors and constant bustle. The arrival of a saloon was a game changer for these rough communities. Suddenly, there was a place for men to gather, drink, and, yes, spread tales about the wildest, most scandalous happenings. Back east, women wouldn't be caught dead in a saloon. They upheld strict Victorian morals and were expected to behave in a certain way. But out on the frontier, things were different. Men and women both saw an opportunity. The frontier was a place where people could reinvent themselves, and for some women, this meant stepping into roles that were unheard of back east. They became saloon girls, entertaining the men, dancing, and sometimes more. As these saloons sprang up, so did their stories. At first, there were just a few women of ill repute, often hiding behind other jobs like seamstress or laundress. But soon enough, saloon owners started enticing these women to work more openly in their establishments, and the women themselves realized they could earn more money here than they ever could back home. This is where the rumors really started flying. The men had all sorts of names for these women: soiled doves, painted ladies, sporting women, and the nicknames were just the beginning. Every night in the saloon was another chance for a juicy tale to start. Someone would see a saloon girl disappear upstairs with a customer, and by morning the whole town would be buzzing with exaggerated stories of what happened. These rumors weren't just idle chatter. They shaped the very character of these frontier towns. As more and more saloons were built, the towns themselves grew. It wasn't long before every dusty settlement had its own share of scandalous stories, each more outrageous than the last, and the saloon was always at the center of it all. Number 2, Victorian morals meet frontier liberties. Have you ever wondered what it must have been like for women moving from the conservative East to the wild frontier? It was like stepping into a completely different world. Back East, women were expected to follow strict Victorian morals. Think of those tightly laced corsets and the prim and proper behavior. Women didn't go to saloons. They stayed home, upheld high moral standards, and were the epitome of respectability. But when families headed west, everything changed. The frontier wasn't a place where you could afford to be too picky about social norms. Life was tough, and survival often meant bending or outright breaking those strict Victorian codes. The frontier was a place of opportunity, and people were more concerned with making a living than maintaining a polished image. Now, contrast that with the women who became saloon girls. These ladies were a far cry from their Victorian counterparts. They embraced a more liberated lifestyle out of necessity and sometimes choice. The Wild West wasn't the place for strict morals. It was a place where survival and making a buck often came first. This clash of cultures created quite the stir and plenty of gossip. Victorian women would have been scandalized by the sight of saloon girls dancing, singing, and even engaging in to earn a living. But out on the frontier, these women were a vital part of the community, offering entertainment and companionship in a world that was otherwise incredibly harsh and lonely. Number 3, the many names for. It seems like everyone had their own colorful term for these women, and many of the names were pretty imaginative and often derogatory. For instance, soiled doves was a common term. It sounds almost poetic, doesn't it? But it was a way to hint at their fallen status. Then there were the painted ladies, a name inspired by their heavy use of makeup, which was considered scandalous and provocative. Can you imagine the gossip that must have followed them just for daring to wear a little rouge? Sporting women and ladies of the line were other popular names. These terms were used to hint at their profession without saying it outright. In Kansas, they were sometimes called daughters of sin or fallen frails, which paints a pretty vivid picture of how society viewed them. And then there were the nymphs du prairie. Doesn't that sound almost whimsical? Number 4. Versus entertainment, blurring the lines. Here's where things get really interesting. The line between and entertainment in the Wild West was often blurry, and this led to a ton of rumors. Saloon girls weren't just about. They played a crucial role in entertaining the lonely men of the frontier. Many of these women were there to dance, sing, and simply keep the men company. Their primary job was to make sure the customers were happy and stayed longer, spending more money on drinks. Some of these women were even known to be quite savvy. They'd drink tea or colored water while the men paid for expensive whiskey, thinking they were sharing a drink with a pretty lady. However, the rumors painted a much more promiscuous picture. People loved to gossip, and the tales of saloon girls offering more than just a dance spread like wildfire. In reality, while some women did engage in many were just trying to make an honest living through entertainment. The more scandalous stories, though, are the ones that stuck in people's minds. Number 5. The money behind the myths. You probably heard all kinds of wild stories about how much saloon girls made, right? Well, it turns out that money was a huge motivator behind many of the rumors about. First off, saloon girls had a pretty clever way of making a living. They weren't just about dancing and flirting, they were savvy businesswomen. The men would buy them drinks, thinking they were sharing a glass of whiskey, but in reality, these girls were sipping tea or colored water. The men paid full price, and the girls got a commission on every drink. It was a smart way to earn without getting drunk. Now, there were plenty of myths about how much these women earned. Some stories would have you believe they were rolling in gold, but the truth was a bit different. While they did make more money than they might have back east, the figures were often exaggerated. On average, a saloon girl could earn about $10 a week, which would be around $200 today. Not bad, but not exactly a fortune. Number 6. Community and condemnation. Ever wondered how workers were viewed by their communities in the Wild West? It's a pretty interesting mix of attitudes. On one hand, these women were often seen as a necessary evil. The frontier was a tough place, full of rough and lonely men, and provided a kind of companionship and relief that was hard to come by otherwise. Townsfolk generally tolerated their presence because, let's face it, the saloons and brothels brought in money. Their establishments contributed to the local economy, and in many cases, madames and were known to support community projects. They might donate to build a school or a church, and that kind of contribution earned them a grudging acceptance. However, this tolerance didn't mean they were fully accepted or respected. Proper women, especially those who adhere to Victorian morals, looked down on these respectable members of society often shunned them, creating a clear social divide. Despite their contributions, were frequently the subject of gossip and condemnation. It was a complicated relationship, with the community relying on their economic contributions while simultaneously judging their personal choices. Number 7. Evolution of brothels and rumors. It's fascinating how these places went from simple, rough rooms to lavish establishments. Early on, brothels were just a couple of rooms shared by a few women. These were basic setups with little in the way of comfort or luxury. As towns grew and prospered, so did the brothels. Enterprising women, often former workers themselves, became madams and saw the potential for more upscale operations. They started opening larger, more luxurious brothels. These high-end establishments were often beautiful homes with individual, lavishly furnished rooms for each woman. The difference was night and day compared to the early rough conditions. Madams played a crucial role in this transition. They were savvy businesswomen who knew how to attract clients and keep them coming back. They rented rooms to the women and took a percentage of their earnings, usually around 50%. Despite this steep cut, many women preferred working in these higher-end brothels because of the relative safety and comfort they provided. There was also a clear hierarchy within these brothels. At the top were the madams, who ran the show and ensured everything ran smoothly. Then came the more experienced and popular who could command higher prices and better rooms. At the bottom were the newcomers, and those less favored by clients, who often had to work harder for less pay. The evolution of brothels also fueled plenty of rumors. People speculated about the wealth of madams, the luxuries inside these establishments, and the goings-on behind closed doors. These tales added to the mystique and allure of the brothel, making them an enduring part of the Wild West lore. Number 8. Flashy fashion and falsehoods. Let's discuss the fashion choices of Wild West and how these choices sparked all kinds of rumors. Imagine walking into a saloon and seeing women dressed in bright, eye-catching skirts that scandalously reached just below the knee. For the time, this was quite shocking, and definitely not what the conservative women wore back east were wearing. These saloon girls weren't just trying to look pretty. Their fashion was a bold statement designed to attract attention. Their skirts were often vibrant and adorned with ruffles, fringe, and lace. Add to the low-cut bodices showing off their shoulders and bosoms, and you can see why they turned heads. But what really got people talking were the visible garters holding up their stockings, something that was considered quite risque. This daring fashion didn't just make them the center of attention in the saloons, it also made them the subject of many rumors. People whispered about their morals and behavior, assuming that anyone who dressed so provocatively must be engaging in all sorts of scandalous activities. These falsehoods spread quickly, adding to the mystique and allure of the saloon girls, even though many of them were just trying to make a living through entertainment rather than promiscuity. Number 9. Scandals of the rich and famous. Here's where things get really juicy. The scandals involving the rich and famous of the Wild West. It wasn't just everyday cowboys frequenting the brothels and saloons. Notable figures often found themselves caught up in rumors and scandals involving. Take Wyatt Earp, for example. He was a lawman and gambler whose name is legendary in the Wild West history. Rumors swirled about his relationships with various women, including workers. Then there's Doc Holliday, another famous figure often linked with the saloon scene. These associations weren't just whispered about, they made headlines and added to the legends of these men. Such scandals had a significant impact on their reputations. On one hand, it added an air of mystery and excitement to their personas, making them even more legendary. On the other hand, it also invited criticism and moral judgment from more conservative quarters. The involvement of high-profile clients in these rumors only fueled the gossip mill, ensuring that the tales of these interactions would be remembered and retold for generations. Number 10. The legacy of Wild West. These women were more than just part of the saloon scene. They were trailblazers who played a crucial role in the development of frontier towns. For one, their work helped to support and stabilize the local economies. The money brought in by these saloons and brothels was significant, funding everything from basic town infrastructure to schools and churches. Many madams were known for their philanthropic efforts, using their earnings to contribute to community projects. Beyond the economic impact, these women also pushed social boundaries. They operated in a space where they could exert a degree of independence and control over their lives, and that was rare for women at the time. This made them pioneers in their own right, challenging the strict gender norms of the era. Their place in history is complex and often misunderstood, but undeniably important. They were part of the rough and tumble world of the Wild West, shaping its culture and leaving a mark that has been remembered in stories, films, and books. The legacy of these is a testament to their resilience and ingenuity in the face of a challenging and often hostile environment. Number 11. Misconceptions about their work. You might think that every saloon girl was offering more than just a dance, but that's not entirely true. Sure, there were women who engaged in but many were primarily there to entertain. Picture this. You walk into a bustling saloon, the music is lively, and there's a crowd of men at the bar. The saloon girls are moving through the crowd, chatting, laughing, and dancing. Their main job was to keep the men entertained and buying drinks. They'd dance with them, sing, and sometimes play games or cards. The goal was to make the men stay longer and spend more money on drinks. And here's the clever part. The drinks they shared with the men were often just tea or colored water, but the men paid for them like they were whiskey. The saloon girls got a commission on these drinks, which could add up to a decent amount of money. So, while the rumors painted them all as the reality was that many earned their keep through entertainment rather than sex. Number 12. Financial myths and realities. There were plenty of myths about how much these women earned, and the financial arrangements were often misunderstood. Some stories would have you believe that saloon girls were rolling in gold, but that's a bit of an exaggeration. Saloon girls earned a weekly salary, often around $10, which was pretty good for the time, but their real money came from the commission on drinks. Every drink sold meant more cash in their pocket, so they worked hard to keep those orders coming. The more drinks a girl sold, the higher her earnings. On top of that, many of these women had to pay rent for the rooms, which could be quite expensive. If they were working in a brothel, the madam would take a cut, usually around 50% of their earnings. Then there were fines and other expenses, like buying their own costumes and makeup. So, while they did make more money than they might have back east, it wasn't always the fortune the rumors suggested. Number 13. The Comstock Act and its consequences. This federal law, passed in 1873, made it illegal to distribute any obscene, lewd, or lascivious materials through the mail. This included information on birth control and abortion, which was a huge deal for workers. Without access to proper birth control, many women had to rely on homemade remedies to prevent pregnancy. These methods were often unreliable and could be dangerous. Things like herbal concoctions, douching with vinegar, or other makeshift solutions were commonly used, but they didn't always work. Abortion, if it became necessary, was even riskier. Illegal abortions were performed in unsanitary conditions, often by untrained individuals. The risk of infection, injury, or death was high. This harsh reality was compounded by the fact that any discussion or distribution of information about these topics was banned under the Comstock Act. Number 14. The power of the madam. Okay, so let's talk about madams. These women were the real powerhouses of the Wild West. They often started as saloon girls, but quickly realized there was more money to be made by running their own show. By becoming madams, they could control the business and take a larger share of the profits. Madams were smart and influential. They didn't just run brothels, they contributed to the community. Some even helped to build schools and churches, which might sound surprising given their line of work. This dual role of being both a community benefactor and a brothel owner added layers to their reputations, making them subjects of both respect and scandalous gossip. Number 15. Fashion and fantasy. You know how fashion can be a statement? Well, in the Wild West, it was a bold declaration, especially for saloon girls. These women didn't shy away from standing out. and their daring fashion choices fueled plenty of rumors about promiscuity. Imagine walking into a saloon and seeing women in brightly colored skirts that scandalously reached just below the knee. For the time, this was quite shocking. They wore low-cut bodices that showed off their shoulders and bosoms, adorned with fringed silk and lace. Their outfits were designed to catch the eye and hold attention, but it wasn't just the clothes. The term painted ladies came about because these women dared to wear makeup, rouge on their cheeks, bright lipstick, and even dyed hair. This was almost unheard of among respectable women of the time and led to all sorts of scandalous stories about their morals and behavior. Number 16. Danger and drama in the bedroom. Working in the Wild West saloons and brothels came with significant risks, adding to their mystique and the drama that surrounded them. First off, many saloon girls and carried weapons, knives, small pistols, anything they could use to protect themselves. The threat of violence was real. Men could be rough, and the environment was often lawless. Having a means of defense was essential for survival. Then there were the diseases. Without proper medical care or effective treatments, transmitted diseases like syphilis and gonorrhea were rampant. These illnesses not only took a physical toll, but also added to the tragic and often dramatic stories about these women. And let's not overlook the personal danger. These women were sometimes at the mercy of possessive or violent customers. Stories of beatings and even murders were not uncommon, and each tale added another layer to the already complex and often misunderstood lives of saloon girls and Number 17. Aging out of the trade. Have you ever wondered what happened to those Wild West once they got older? Life wasn't easy, and aging out of the trade came with its own set of challenges and opportunities. For some women, becoming a madam was a natural next step. They used their experience and savings to open their own brothels. This allowed them to continue earning a living, while also taking on a leadership role. These women often gained a certain level of respect within their communities, especially if they were known for treating their girls well and contributing to the local environment, like funding schools or churches. Others started small businesses. Maybe they opened a seamstress shop or a boarding house. These women had to be smart and resourceful to make a new life for themselves outside the saloon. However, not everyone was so fortunate. Some faced severe social judgment and struggled to find a new path. They might be ostracized by the more respectable women in town, making it hard to fully integrate into a different, more conventional lifestyle. Number 18. The disease dilemma. The spread of venereal diseases like syphilis and gonorrhea was rampant. The lack of effective treatments made these diseases particularly devastating. Without antibiotics, many of these remedies were more harmful than helpful, like mercury-based treatments that cause severe side effects. The constant threat of disease added a tragic element to the lives of and fueled many rumors. People whispered about the tainted women and the dangers they posed. This stigma not only affected their health, but also their reputations. Even if a woman was careful and did her best to stay healthy, the mere association with was enough to tarnish her in the eyes of society. Number 19. Hygiene and hearsay. Hygiene in the Wild West was a far cry from what we're used to today, and this played a big part in the rumors. Regular bathing was a luxury, not a daily habit. Without modern amenities, people made do with what they had. Saloon girls and had to be resourceful to maintain some level of cleanliness. They often used homemade remedies like washing with plain soap once a month or using basins of water in their rooms. This lack of regular hygiene led to plenty of gossip. People loved to talk about the dirty saloon girls, and their unconventional beauty routines added fuel to the fire. Makeup, for instance, was considered scandalous. While proper women shunned cosmetics, saloon girls embraced them using rouge, lipstick, and even dyeing their hair. This boldness in appearance only reinforced the rumors of promiscuity and moral decay. Number 20. Gender imbalance and gossip. One of the most striking aspects of the Wild West was the severe gender imbalance. Men outnumbered women by as much as 3 to 1, sometimes even more. In California during the gold rush, for instance, about 90% of the population was male. This disparity created a social dynamic ripe for rumors and scandal. With so few women around, and the ones who were there, especially those working in saloons and brothels, were in high demand. This high demand led to heightened competition among men, and inevitably more gossip. Stories about who was seeing whom, who was paying for what services, and who was treating which woman poorly spread like wildfire. The scarcity of women meant that every interaction was scrutinized, adding layers of drama to the already tumultuous frontier life. Number 21. Respect and reputation. Despite the harsh conditions and the stigma, saloon girls and workers often enjoyed a certain level of respect from the men they entertained. Saloon owners understood the value of these women and made sure they were treated well, at least within the walls of the establishment. Men knew that mistreating a saloon girl could lead to being barred from the saloon, ostracized by the community, or worse. This protection didn't extend outside the saloon, though, and women often faced social ostracism from more respectable members of society. Proper women looked down on them, and their reputations were always under scrutiny. Yet, in many cases, the men who frequented the saloons held these women in high regard, sometimes even lavishing them with gifts and attention. It was a complicated balance of respect, reputation, and survival. Number 22. Legal gray areas. In the Wild West existed in a murky legal landscape. Whether it was technically legal or not depended on local jurisdictions, which could vary widely. Some towns turned a blind eye, understanding that these establishments brought in significant revenue, while others imposed fines or required licenses. This ambiguous legality only added to the rumors. Stories of bribed officials, secret dealings, and under-the-table arrangements were common. People speculated about the true influence of madams and saloon owners, and how they managed to keep their businesses running despite legal threats. This uncertainty kept the rumor mill churning, as folks tried to make sense of the complex world of Wild West work. Number 23. Rivalries and rumors. Imagine being in a bustling saloon where competition for money, men, and status was fierce. The women working there were all trying to make a living, but they also had to deal with each other. The competition wasn't just friendly. Fights over the best-paying customers or the most desirable positions in the saloon or brothel were common. These rivalries often turned violent, leading to physical altercations that everyone in town would gossip about. One saloon girl might spread a rumor about another to undermine her reputation and attract more business for herself. These conflicts created a hotbed of scandalous tales. Number 24. Alcohol, drugs, and addiction. Life was tough, and many women turned to substances to cope with the harsh realities they faced daily. Alcohol was everywhere in the saloons. It wasn't just the customers who were drinking. The women working there often relied on booze to get through their shifts. It helped them deal with the stress and the loneliness, but it also led to dependency and addiction. Rumors about saloon girls being drunk on the job or having secret stashes of liquor were common. Drugs were another escape. Opium and laudanum were widely available and often used to numb physical and emotional pain. These substances provided temporary relief but came with a high cost. Addiction took a severe toll on these women, leading to tragic outcomes like overdoses or deteriorating health. Number 25. Love and lies. The idea of a saloon girl or falling in love and leaving the profession was a popular theme in the Wild West gossip. Opportunities for romance did arise. Many men, lonely and far from home, formed attachments to the women they spent time with in the saloons. Sometimes these relationships blossomed into genuine affection. There were tales of customers proposing marriage, offering to take the women away from their hard lives. These love stories were romanticized and often exaggerated, adding a layer of intrigue to the saloon scene. But it wasn't always a happy ending. Saloon owners, fearing the loss of their best workers, often took measures to prevent such romances. They might limit the time a customer could spend with any one girl, or spread their own rumors to dissuade the women from leaving. So, when you hear tales of the Wild West, remember that behind every rumor and rivalry, every addiction and love affair, there were real women navigating a tough, unpredictable world. Their stories, full of drama and resilience, are an essential part of the history we still find so captivating today. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.